Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the channel. Last week was a very good week, actually. I was very busy at university, but I hope you enjoyed the content that we did put out. It was a whole bunch of compilations of the funniest chess clips you've ever seen in your life. I was laughing making them, I was laughing uploading them, and I was laughing just looking at how they came out and the reaction to them. It's been absolutely crazy. We did Gotham Chess, we did Hikaru, we did Magnus, we did Andrea and Alex Botes, and there's still more to come, I promise you. But today is a return to more normal content for us. We're going to be covering the Queen's Gambit. That's why you've clicked on this video. And the Queen's Gambit is a very fascinating opening, and it covers so many different branches, and we're going to get a look into it now. As we go over to an analysis board, a reminder of general housekeeping, the moves that I cover will be in the description down below. Okay, so what is the Queen's Gambit? The Queen's Gambit is this. After d4, d5, white plays c4. And generally it's explained as you are gambiting the queenside flank pawn. So the King's Gambit, which we will cover in another video, in another time, goes like this: e4, e5, and then f4. And you're gambiting the King's flank pawn. Whereas, the Queen Gambit d4, d5. And why would you do this? Well, because, firstly, if they take the pawn, you get a nice big open center. You, yes, give up this pawn, but it's advantageous to give up a flank pawn for a center pawn. So they take, and they lose control of the center. Now both of your pawns are nicely sitting in the center, and the Queen's Gambit, it's called the Gambit, but more often than not, white ends up getting the pawn back if it gets taken. I mean, there are various ways to defend them. You really commit everything on the queen side to try and defend it. But we'll cover the Queen's Gambit accepted in another video. Today we're covering what happens if they don't do it, and that's when they play e6. Now this is where it really does branch out. So we're going to cover the main variation, where in this position white will continue with knight to c3, at which point black goes knight to f6. And in this specific move order, it is advantageous to play takes. And you, as we said earlier, you give up your flank pawn for a center pawn. So you've got 2 pawns advantage, and you'll be looking to make use of this e-pawn in the future. Bishop develops, and now bishop to e7. Alternatively, instead of bishop to e7, a move in this specific position, I'll talk about it in some places. It's a very key move in the semi-Slav defense, and it's this move c6. Particularly when you've given up this e-pawn, you play c6 to defend that pawn, because the knight often goes then to d7 to reinforce this knight, particularly after some trades. So here, what can be played is c6, but bishop to e7, and now e3. And it's a very simple setup. Castles, bishop d3, knight bd7. You might say, but doesn't that block in the bishop? Yes, but sometimes you can look to get your bishop out to one of these 2 squares. Fianchettoing or going on this diagonal to try and trade. Because going out this way, sorry, my throat. I hope that didn't cause you too much distress. Going out this way is no good. There's no real target, there's no real places for it to go where it won't become a target or, get captured immediately. So knight bd7. And here's where it really branches out for white. And there's 3 main moves that are played in this position, and I'm going to leave it to you to kind of decide which setup favors you most, because there is the traditional knight to f3. There's also knight g to e2, and there's also queen d2. Queen d2 is a pretty safe move. It puts the queen on the file, it creates a battery over here, and it's a pretty standard move in these positions. And you might say, doesn't this structure look like a London? Kinda does. Reference to London video, Catalan video, all sorts of videos down in the description down below as well. So this is where I will leave you to it, because where the knight goes, because if it goes here, you can play f3, g4, h4, and you can really go for stuff like that. Knight to f3 is a more classical setup, looking to get control then of e5, queen d2, some pawn moves, and then castling is up for you. Black is castled already, they've got their bishop on e7, and it's a very passive setup for black, which is why it's often employed by white. So what else can black do? Well, firstly, we're going to look at what they can do here instead of knight to f6. So we spoke about knight to f6. Instead of that, they can go for something very aggressive, and that is, where is it? I have it here, c5. They can go for c5, which is a very aggressive move by black, and it looks to gain space in the center, with the caveat that this pawn on d5 can become isolated because of a trade. So, for example, cd5, ed5, and then something like, just for argument's sake, dc3, not dc3, sorry, I'm getting confused, knight f3, takes, you play against this. This is IQP, isolated queen's pawn, but black gains a bit of space. Their pieces will develop a lot more naturally, and they have a lot more space to fight with, as opposed to, if you look, as I don't mean to shift the board, compare this position to this position. I know the pieces aren't developed, but if you think of where the pieces are going to go, black has so much more space and mobility. So that's why it's employed, but it is very risky. Sorry, as I go into my analysis. I did look at one other variation here, which is cd4, and then the mirror image capture over here, and then there's two main moves played by white. One is the queen a4 check line, where blocks, takes, queen takes, knight comes out, knight comes out. We kick out the queen once again, and then here, something like queen d1. And this is a position that you can play. Bishop still goes out, e3, all this stuff. And this is a way that you can play. Black's down a pawn, but again has the compensation for space, easier development, castling to safety. And it's all good stuff, bishop to c5 and stuff like that. Or instead of queen to a4, there is the immediately taking the pawn, at which point we get, knight to c6, kicking out the queen, takes here, takes, and check. And we can get to this endgame very quickly in about 10 moves, which is slightly better for white. And there's no games found in the database, so reference material for this is pretty thin, because I don't think, ed5 here, I don't think, it is the top played move. Yes, then queen d5. Then, you can play bishop d7 as well. Instead of kicking out the queen immediately. You do give up the pawn, but as you've said, it's all about that development, quick development for black. So that is the Queen's Gambit declined, with the knight then on c3. But what happens if we don't play knight to c3? What if instead if we start with knight to f6? Knight to f6 is a very flexible move, particularly if we go by later ways to transpose to this position. It's a very flexible move, and it lends itself to like a Catalan setup. The Catalan won't be covered. It'll be linked down below because we've done a video on it. Knight to f6 stays the same, and then knight to c3. And now you've still got bishop to e7. Here's where I'm talking about c6 being a move. This pawn is still there, so when both pawns are on these squares, it is like a semi-Slav structure. But in this case, we can play bishop to e7. Bishop to g5 still the same. And now you can still, you play for e4, you play for control of the center, but you don't quite get the advantage of trading. You've got to know when to trade. So it'll be e3 and stuff, so we get here like h6, bishop h4, castles, e3. And this is the kind of QGD, Queen's Gambit decline, that you can expect from this position. It's very symmetrical, but you've committed to knight to f3. Remember, we've spoken about lines when if you start with knight to c3, the knight can go then to something like e2 with the bishop already there on d3. And it's another way to play. That's what makes the Queen's Gambit one of the most explored openings, one of the most popular openings, because it's not just, oh, we play this and you only play this specific way. It's not very forceful in their ways to set up. So you can go into the Queen's Gambit and play 3 different ways in 3 different games. Alright. I hope that has been helpful. As I said, there will be a video coming out later today, if I'm not mistaken, or tomorrow, about the Queen's Gambit accepted, which is not this. Yes, this. When you take the pawn. And it is played. It is played. The one final footnote I have for you is sometimes you won't get to the Queen's Gambit straight up with this position because most players with black play knight to f6. So then what do? You still play c4, and now you go for here. And now you have to be aware of one other thing. If you commit to knight to c3 already, you are allowing the Nimsa Indian defense. You won't get into a Queen's Gambit position. Sorry. You won't get into a Queen's Gambit position. So this is one thing you need to know about. So this is when that knight f3 move is useful, because now they can, either if they really don't want to go for Queen's Gambit, they can play Queen's Indian, which lends itself to this kind of stuff, or they can go into Queen's Gambit declined, in which case now you play knight to c3. They could still play this, which is, I believe, the Rogozin with black, and that's something you need to know about. This is in part of the Queen's Gambit repertoire. You just play bishop to g5, h6, now you take on f6, so queen takes f6, and now you play e3, and this is the setup you would play in this kind of position. So I hope you've stuck around for this footnote. I do believe I'm now finished. Please be aware of that trick in the opening, or not trick, but the way that you reach this by transposition, because you take your chances with knight to c3. You might end up in a Queen's Gambit declined. You might end up in an Nimsa Indian. And remember, black can always take this pawn. That is always something you need to be looking at. When can black take the pawn? When can't they take the pawn? You don't want to be hanging pawns in the opening. Otherwise, that's all I have to say. I hope you enjoy your day, and I'll see you when I see you.